I was asked if I wanted to get initiated, and the letter of recommendation was sent, and I was waiting, for it to come back, and I was thinking, I wish I could have a name, something to do with Vrindavan. And I've heard quite a few devotees talking about their name and how, it's a magical thing happens. So I'm thinking, wow, but Yamuna, the name Yamuna has gone since a long time, and what else is there for women, for girls? What else is there for girls, in Vrindavan? I didn't even know what places there were in Vrindavan or anything. And I think that my temple president, which was Petit Udaran, I think I heard from him later on that he had recommended me a name for me, or she suggested a name for me. Or he was thinking of one, which would be Jaya Rukmini, because I was newly married as well, you see. And I thought, oh, gosh, I really wish I could have a name. Too bad I won't be able to get a name from Vrindavan. And then the letter came, and he said that my name was Govardhan Dasi. I could not believe that. I could not believe that. And, even today, I'm so thrilled to have that name. So thrilled. Yeah, so that was very special for me, that I wanted something and I received it, which just shows that, Krishna does say here and there in the scriptures that it's his pleasure, eternal pleasure, to fulfill the desires of his devotees, and Prabhupada was, directly with him, and whoever chose the names, whether it was his servant or whoever it was a miracle, honestly. Well, it was, I think, July of 1973, and I was getting the Gayatri mantra, second initiation. And I was getting it from Prabhupada himself, and we were all waiting outside the door, and one by one we would go in. So then one of the men came back, or boys came back, and it was like, oh, Prabhupada said I had long nails. So we were trying to sort our nails out, It was my turn to go in. And I bowed down at the entrance of the room, and it seemed like a very, very big room at that time. When you grow up and you go back to your old childhood places and they're just not as big as you imagined. To me, it seemed like a huge room. And Prabhupada was quite a long way away, so I bowed down just by the door. It's all white dust sheets. And I'm saying, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale. And because even then, I loved languages, you see, and at school my favorite subjects were languages. And I just come from school 6 months before. And I knew the word for word meaning of those words, right? So I'm saying it and I'm smiling, so I'm like in the presence of Prabhupada and saying it, And when someone's smiling, you can hear that in their voice, can't you? So I was doing this and I was really, really happy, but nervous. And I looked up and Prabhupada had the biggest smile on his face. And I wasn't expecting anything, I just looked up and there he was, really smiling. And then he patted the floor next to him, because he was on this cushion, but it's not as big as the cushion that he's sitting on now. It was just like a thin thing. Sitting, close to the floor, and he was smiling at me so beautifully, and he was patting the floor like this. Like, come and sit down. And I just couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe it. So I start walking towards him. It's like, I wish that walk would never have ended, because he was pleased. And in retrospect, just thinking about that particular incident, recently, I was thinking, it was really nice that there was something about me that Prabhupada could affirm or, celebrate or appreciate or be pleased by. Because I didn't feel myself to be, like a normal devotee woman, because I was very young and I'm not a cook still now. Cooking frightens me. I didn't really have anything to offer. And the fact that he was pleased by that somehow, that was very wonderful. And then I sat down and we had a piece of paper which was with the Gayatri mantras on it. And it was a little piece of paper like a slip from a typed copy. And I don't think photocopying machines existed at that time. So they were done by typing with a manual typewriter. And so you had the carbon paper in between each copy. And mine must have been the 4th or 5th copy. It was very pale. So Prabhupada took this and he was still very jolly. He took it from me. He said, it requires transcendental eyes. It's like my life hangs on those words. First of all, I thought, wow, he's made a joke. First of all, he smiles. Then he's making a joke, and I thought, I must remember the words, because I was just so frightened and so excited and so kind of like young, and there was nobody else there, you know, so I thought I have to remember those words, and you know, 45 years later I can still recite them. It requires transcendental eyes. So I've taken that, you know, through life. You know, the older I get, the more importance it has to me. Like later on, I would have a service of drama, doing drama and stuff. Lots of time with children. And it was like trying to transfer the transcendental emotions that I'd read about, the pastimes or whatever it was that I'd read about in Prabhupada's books, trying to put them, bring them into a concrete reality, you know, using the devotee children as instruments or as material, if you like a potter uses clay, except that they were alive. And, you know, that was a kind of an important meditation, the transcendental eyes. You know, the trying to sort of bring everything in, you know, create or transmit transcendence or something. And also, like when things are difficult, you know, try to see there's a purpose behind it. Try and get back into that consciousness of like when we came back from the airport with no shoes. These things are relatively unimportant, no matter how painful they might be, you know, at the time in this limited sphere that we seem to live our lives in, or that I live my life in. They're not all that important, actually, so the transcendental eyes. And also, for example, I use it now on Harinam because, well, I like to do Harinam, and that's what I mostly do in terms of service, apart from deity worship at home. And, you know, you don't always get a positive response or a response from people, you know, that they don't understand what they're hearing and getting. So I just try to remember that, you know, this is not an ordinary thing, it's not an ordinary movement. It's not an ordinary sound. It's the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it's the only thing that counts in our lives and the lives of people that are hearing the mantra, because it's something to extract us and them, you know, from the material world. So those words have carried me through life, basically. And I'm so grateful that I got that little bit of personal association with Prabhupada, because it really has meant the world to me. Anyway, I sat down and he said that joke, and then we did the, you know, learning to count and the mantra and everything. That passed without event. And Prabhupada was very grave at that point. You know, Prabhupada went from somebody who was just being so emotional and loving to me to a very grave personality. And that was very instructive too, because the spiritual master might love you, but he also has to teach you. He's not an ordinary person. And then I said, you know, thank you, Srila Prabhupada. I did my basis and I went. So that was that. It was in the old temple room, which was where the theatre is now. And the Vyasa-san was towards the back. And the devotees were all there, and I just thought I would start dancing. But I think I was maybe not, I don't know, I wasn't really dancing because of ecstasy and being transported. I was just trying to join in, you know, and I was quite close to Prabhupada. And he just looked at me. He just looked right through me. He just looked at me and he just could see everything. And I was still trying to sort of like look happy and join in. And he kept on looking, and I just thought, I want to show Prabhupada that I am sincere, that I want to be a devotee, that I, you know. But he just looked and looked and looked. And he could see what a specimen he had picked up, you know. He could see what a specimen he'd picked up. And he didn't, how can I put it, you know, it's like he saw all of it. And I think I was doing something, I was doing something wrong. I must not have been keeping the etiquette or something or other, and he was not happy. And then I just had to look away, because I thought, first of all, I kept on looking, thinking, well, I don't want to not meet his glance. I didn't know what the etiquette was or anything. And anyway, then I had to look away. And then he just, when I looked back at him, he'd looked away, and it was like I didn't exist. So it was kind of like, it was a very humbling and shocking experience. But it wasn't nasty, you know. We knew that Prabhupada loved us. I mean, the thing is, he gave up. He invested his whole life. You know, he brought such a treasure, and he had to not just plant it and go. He had to be with us all the time and cope with and deal with all the things that were going on, and translate his books in the night time and travel around at his age. And I know a little bit. I'm not the age that he was when he left India yet, but bad enough, and it's just inconceivable how he could have done what he did. So it's not that he didn't love us, but sometimes he was, as I said before, you know, he was the guru. He wasn't there just to mess around and make friends. You know, he had a message, and he had a process that had to be followed if you wanted to get success. I got to put 3 garlands on Prabhupada, and I have forgotten the circumstances of 2 of them. But I know that Sarvamangala, my friend, was always helping me, pushing me forward, encouraging me to do service. So she got me to do that. So I'm waiting in what the kids later called the round circle, which is a different entrance to the temple room at Bhaktivedanta Manor, for Prabhupada to leave, and there's a few of us there, and the car's there. And finally Prabhupada came down the stairs, and when he went through, he had to walk through the temple room. You know, and what I remember from him coming through the temple room was that there was a guest there, a man, who did his obeisances to Prabhupada, but he did them with his feet towards the deities. He was like doing it in front of Prabhupada, and when afterwards, Prabhupada said to Mukunda, who's now Mukunda Maharaj, he said, "You should instruct." So Prabhupada always wanted a standard to be kept, and he wanted the devotees to be able to train the guests, and that was a very important thing. So then when he came out, I thought how kind it was of him to step forward towards me, because I was like standing with this garland, and I thought, how kind is, I thought, what will I do now? Like, I didn't feel very worthy to be doing this service, you know, so he walked towards me and put his head down. And his head, I don't want to sound too lyrical, but his head did give me the impression of being like a lotus bud, and I hope that doesn't sound too corny. I just carry on with the description since I've started it. It was a little bit pointed and smooth, and there were the little hairs that were around the side. They were sort of shining, and it just looks so poetic and beautiful. Everything that Prabhupada did was extremely poetic and beautiful, beautifully done without any extraneous movement, and with economy, but just so beautiful, because everything that he did he didn't have any false ego, he didn't have any false identity. Everything was beautiful, so I feel very, very blessed to have had that experience. Another time with a garland at New Mayapur in France, Krishna Bhamani, who is a lovely, lovely woman. And I consider it to be a great treasure that I have some memories of some god sisters and god brothers or devotees that I can really admire. So she said to me, "Can you make Prabhupada's afternoon garland?" Because she had something else to do. So I said, "Yeah, shall I make it in any particular way?" She said, "No, just put the flowers as you like." And it ended up, when I asked her afterwards if it was okay, she said I had to redo it because it wasn't symmetrical. Now, I didn't know that it had to be symmetrical because she had said, like, do it the way that you like. But even so, just not so long ago, I read this verse in the 11th canto, which said that Krishna is saying to Uddhava that this process is the most perfect, because using the impermanent things of the material world, you can attain me, the supreme transcendence. And then he adds a little bit, which is, even if those things are externally useless. I think that's amazing, that externally useless things, or things that are wrong, still by using them, you can attain Krishna. So that's what I remember about that. That I made a garland that wasn't right, but still, I think the service still went to Krishna. Well, at New Mayapur, when Prabhupada came, like anywhere, the normal devotees were instructed to not bother him, let him do his translating and let him do his things. But we heard that he was coming out for a darshan, and I just lived in this house, which was right next to the spot where Prabhupada sat. And it was a very beautiful experience. And recently, I went back to New Mayapur and saw that spot, and I said, I would like to build a house there and make a plaque, that Prabhupada sat here. And you can read about those. I think he gave 2 darshans at that spot. You read about it in Hari Sori Prabhu's book. Anyway, I knew about one of them, so I went to one of them, and Prabhupada was sitting there. And there were devotees that were sitting behind him, Avyaya and Adi Shekhar and Bhajahari, who passed away not long ago. And you look at those pictures with Prabhupada in the center, and them just so close to him and fanning him and stuff, and it was just so intimate and beautiful. There were quite a few devotees there as well. It was outdoors, a very nice weather. And it was right next to the garden where the vegetables and flowers were being grown. And we had like a tannoy system, and it hadn't been there that long. And Prabhupada's Krishna meditations tape was playing, across the tannoy. So it was coming across, and Yogeshwara said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, it sounds like your voice is coming from the spiritual world. And this is the one thing I remember that Prabhupada said. He said, that's because it is coming from the spiritual world, and everyone laughed. So that was a very pleasant moment. But then Prabhupada wanted a Bhagavad-gita. And because I just lived next door, I thought, well, shall I want to get a Bhagavad-gita? And I'm thinking, they've all gone, but I have not. I only live here. But I was scared because in case my daughter, who was little, in case she started to cry if I suddenly jumped up. So I ended up not going. But I still remember that, at least in my heart, I went to get a Bhagavad-gita. Now, I'll just go on to say when Prabhupada left New Mayapur, which was visited in 1976, went twice as far as I know, and for the second one I was there. The first one we were here actually. But he was going, and we waited outside the chateau for his departure. And there was all the devotees from Europe were there, and it was a big crowd. And I was there with my daughter, and he appeared then. He came out surrounded by some of his, confidential devotees, managers and so on, who were with him. And I really wanted to see, but I was kind of towards the back, and I was holding my daughter. She was about 18 months or something, or 18 months, whatever. And I really wanted to see, because it was just so beautiful. And then all of a sudden, the devotees parted. And I could see this, like just the first time I saw Prabhupada, it was like in a frame of a doorway. And I saw him sort of framed by his associates at the top of the stairs at the chateau with the door behind. And it was kind of the same, and I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if this is the last time that I'll see him, which it ended up being. But I was so grateful, and it's also amazing that Krishna would do that. And for somebody, such an insignificant person, all of a sudden everybody moved, and I could see. But the Krishna Balaram installation at New Mayapur, which happened that visit, I didn't see anything of that really because, it was so packed. I thought, if my daughter starts crying, I'll never be able to get out. And I was talking about it recently to some devotees, and just said, well, what's the difference? Either you take care of your child or you sit in the installation. What's the difference? It's all devotional service. It's all, part of the same family. This links in with the outstanding quality of Prabhupada that for me is very prominent. And what was happening was he was giving a class at the manor, and where the Gurukula office is and the washing up place, where those places are now, there was kind of an open space with sinks, and we used to make garlands there. A Mandakini, and another god sister who's an angel, she said, when she saw the flowers that we had, she said, just see what beautiful flowers Krishna has provided for his beloved. I mean, that's where she was thinking then, even in those days. So Prabhupada attracted beings that were full of devotion. So I knew there were lots of petals, in there that were actually left over. And I wanted to do something for Prabhupada. He was giving the class, and his shoes were outside the temple room. And so I got some of these petals, quite a lot of them, and I made like a little cushion of petals, and I put his shoes on top. And I thought, I can't get near to him, but he'll know that, someone has put these flowers here for him. It was all nice, so I was waiting for him to come out, and then the class finished, and all of a sudden everyone started moving. And there were devotees walking backwards. They were fanning him and taking pictures, and everyone's going, Jai, Prabhupada, and I love that when you hear a class, and at the end everyone shouts Jai. It's just a celebration of the wonderful experience of listening to Prabhupada, being with him, being part of his movement. So anyway, he's walking towards the door, and one of the devotees who was walking backwards actually messed up the whole thing. And I thought, well, again, like the intention was there, so I'm sure some prophet was there in doing it. And I ran up the back stairs and threw myself. Prabhupada's already going up the stairs. And I threw myself on the floor doing my obeisances on that little landing. And Sarvamangala said, as he walked past, and Sarvamangala said he smiled. But that's in connection with the quality of Prabhupada, which I like very much, which is his majesty. He was so majestic, not at all proud, extremely self-sufficient and so bold and confident. He wasn't here to mess around, you know, he was here to spread the name of Krishna, to open the door to let us out of this material world, and anybody who wanted could come along. He was like a king, but there was no pride in him, and I liked that very much, the boldness of him. And when I saw him, getting up to go from his class, it was like the planets were moving. It was like the sun and the planets were moving. It was sort of like, it was like cosmic, because it was so important. Everything that he did was so important.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu